across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it's Petrie here with you, and I want to talk about, obviously, what happened with Donald Trump visiting, and I just wonder if everybody now thinks that the royal family are worth the money, or is worth the money. This soft power that they sort of wheeled out for Trump's grand visit, his first day of the visit. Well, joining me now is Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. A lot of people... Amy, hello.
Hello, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. A lot of people are against the royal family. They think they're too expensive, they cost too much money, there's too much attention to them, all of those kind of things. But you can't help but look at what happened
today,
and think, I don't think the King and Queen particularly were relishing spending 24 hours or however long it is, 12 hours in the company of...
And Kate, who had to sit next to Donald Trump at the banquet hall dinner this evening. Sorry I interrupted you, but I think whilst the King and Queen might have had to put a sort of brave face and smile about things, there were a lot of the royals who turned out today full in force to give Trump literally his, pomp and kind of circumstance moment, which we know appeals to the man's ego.
Yeah, he absolutely loves it, but I'd just be interested to see, because soft power by its nature, and you know this because you work for the Home Office, but you can't quantify it. It is so difficult to put a value, a financial value, if you like, on soft power. For example, our aid programmes overseas, it's very difficult. There's some suggestion, of course, that will prevent more migration and that will help, other countries bolster their health programmes or whatever. But it is very difficult to quantify, and I think that's why people don't really buy it.
Yeah, because it's so hard to boil it down to the cold, hard pounds and pence. Does one side of the accounting ledger, sort of give you more bang for your buck on the other side? Sort of relatedly, I did have a bit of a wry smile when Trump, obviously speaking before he came over, was that he was so excited to be staying in, Windsor Castle, because this was sort of rather unprecedented. Kind of, actually, it's not quite, because obviously Macron and his wife stayed there a few weeks ago when they were over, and kind of the reality of it is it's because Buckingham Palace is actually being refurbished at the moment to kind of your point about, to the tunes of like hundreds of millions of pounds is going to cost to sort of get that historic building back up to kind of a spick and span nature. Whether it was to be used for sort of royal or public functions or not, it is still an asset to both the Crown Estate and the country. Which is my way of kind of talk around whilst I was thinking of it. How exactly do you ever convince people of this, this soft power point? Particularly as I think quite a lot of people would agree, even if they are not pro the royal family, I think there was an awful lot of respect for, Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, I think there was.
I mean, she was widely respected, both domestically and internationally. And I don't know a kind of less naff or more British way of putting it, but from just being a very good egg, a woman who had steered the country, points sometimes involving her own family, actually, through...
Well, she was the only monarch that most of us have ever known.
And steered the country through some very difficult times, sort of post-war period, post-Cold War period, post-colonial period, but still Britain maintaining those with those diplomatic international ties. Then all during scandals involving her own family, Princess Diana. I mean, I dare say there are lots of your listeners who won't be old enough to particularly remember how bad the 90s, the mid-early 90s were, and, Charles and Diana, and who was having an affair and who wasn't having an affair, and who had been...
And the Fergie stuff
Fergie and kind of, did both of those, who had cheated on who, these kind of imperfect marriages, and she did sort of weather those storms.
And then Harry.
And then Harry, and then, even during COVID, who of any of us can forget when she lost her beloved husband of decades long, and she had obviously been at pains during COVID to make these, for somebody of her age at that point, not infrequent appearances, you know, to try and reassure the country, you know, with her Christmas Day speeches. If you remember the first and even the second, I call them the COVID Christmases, because I wasn't able to go home because I was worried about my parents, and I'm sure lots of people would have been in kind of similar positions, and she was at pains to try and reassure the country. And then, you know, when her husband died, she still followed the protocol when she sort of sat alone, because she was so determined to show the country and try and provide try literally lead by example. So I think a lot of people, whether they are, you know, flag-waving supporters of the royal family or not, had an enormous amount of respect for her. Unfortunately, that is then put in stark contrast with, say, somebody like Prince Andrew, and just the grot that has come out over the last few years in his relationship with Epstein. You know, at a slightly lower scale, there has been, you know, Harry and Meghan, I would say, flouncing off, you know, Mexit to America, and sort of then the war of words between the brothers, Harry and William. You know, Fergie, I mean, goodness me, for the last 30 years, she's always sort of been shilling for something, hasn't she, in some way? So, you know, like, the royal family is therefore, I mean, it sounds kind of very polarising. There's either the very, very best of it for all of the reasons that I think were exemplified by Queen Elizabeth. And actually, I think King Charles and Queen Camilla are doing a pretty good job, with some very metaphorical, if not physical, shoes to fill. But then, so unfortunately, there is the kind of younger, less salubrious cadre, which seem to be doing Britain no favours at all. I would find it very hard, actually, as somebody who is pretty pro-monarchy, I would find it very hard to mount a defence as to why I or any other taxpayer is paying anything towards any kind of horse-riding palatial lodge that he lives in upkeep for Prince Andrew at all.
Or his daughters.
Or his daughters. Although they're not actually on the RAVEC, they don't get the sort of full protection kind of anymore, so they're not quite
but
as
they
expensive.
did up until recently.
They did up until relatively recently. But, you know, look, I've just talked about the two extremes, the very sort of best and then the very worst. And then I guess, actually, you know, Princess Kate, I love her. About 20, we're of a sort of similar age, about 20 years ago, I couldn't see the point of her at all. And I was like, why are you hanging around, like, waiting for the, you know, she's called Waity Katie, and there was always kind of nasty stuff in the papers, and, you know, she seemed to be sort of hanging on whilst he was free to go off and do whatever he wanted. Not necessarily dances, but it certainly seemed like she was having to go along with his tune. And then there was, you know, entirely the stuff of the Daily Mail about whether her, you know, her mother had engineered this, and that's why she'd gone to, you know, St Andrews University. And do you know what? I always remember at the time saying, oh my God, I just can't imagine having a glass of wine with her. It'd be so boring. And I disavow those comments of 20 years ago. I think she's brilliant. I think she's so dignified and smiley, and she's had some personal recent health woes, and she took a lot of flack for it at the time, but, you know, the woman had cancer, and she was barely, some form of cancer, she was barely allowed to take a couple of months off. You know, she's come back, she looked absolutely radiant on Wednesday evening at this state banquet with Trump, and frankly, if you can sit for 2 hours next to Trump and keep that level of, you know, glittering, lovely smile on your face, then all credit to her.
Yeah, it is an interesting, because I think there are, like you said, there are two camps with this. There will be those people who absolutely love the royal family and would love them anyway without the soft power angle. And then there are those, the Republicans, who want rid of the royal family entirely, to get rid of it all. And the question I want to ask is, after Wednesday's sort of pomp and pageantry, which I don't 100% agree that Donald Trump deserved it. However, I do see that playing to somebody's, if it's ego or whatever it is with him, for the betterment of the country. Because, you know, Keir Starmer being a little bit sycophantic around him makes my
Cringy.
stomach turn. But I understand why, on the other hand, I understand why he's having to behave like that, because anybody who stands up to this president is likely to get a worse deal for the country, because he takes everything personally. So seeing this today and seeing how completely pleased with himself Donald Trump was can only be good for the country, and that's because of the king.
Yes, and also, you know, the military bands, the parade. It was the MOD has confirmed it was the largest sort of military parade there's ever been involved in. I think about 1,600 troops in some form. And as I say, all the bands and then the photos of the banqueting hall with this table which has taken kind of a week and a half to put together, with all these beautiful flowers and, you know, sort of 5 crystal glasses for everybody. I mean, yes, okay, there's the element of it's being done to not just put salve on, but completely kind of over massage, you know, Trump's ego. But also, I think Britain can just be proud of doing that, because we're just bloody good at doing something.
We are good.
And it turns out that a big military parade and a wonderful dinner and a glittering royal family happen to be 3 of them.
Yeah, and it could be that we get billions of pounds worth of investment. We've yet to hear the detail on that. But there will be people who saw that today, particularly the banquet, and thought, well, that, you know, at the same time, let them eat cake, you know, for the rest of us. It's kind of, there are people living in poverty, there are people having a really rough ride of it at the moment because they can't get to the NHS for their cancer treatment or whatever it is, and they'll be looking at that and to some degree thinking, look at the waste of money. Look at that waste of money when that could house veterans, or that could help me with the NHS, or that could help my children with a new school uniform. So I do kind of get it, but I suppose it's the bigger picture, isn't it? Looking at it and saying, well, look, now that Donald Trump is, you know, saying there's a special relationship and he feels very keenly, blah, 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 maybe he will go more softly on us. I mean, look, in 2 days' time, he might change his mind.
Well, I mean, who knows? It's quite literally Donald Trump,
it's
right?
Quite literally, we don't know. But for now, if this butters him up enough that it benefits the country as a whole, is the price tag of, first of all, this visit, which the last one was 3.9 million, which translates to 5 million. So, and then the security on top of that. So, you know, it could be, let's say, about £7 million for this visit. I don't know, I'm just rounding up the numbers, and we'll find out in the fullness of time. There was a bigger police presence this time, there was much more security this time. But let's say, I would say 10 million, I'm just making up numbers now, 10 million.
Sorry, do you want to give Rachel Reeves a call? Because I think she needs a bit of a hand at the moment.
Yeah, that's what she that's what she does, isn't it? Let's call it...
Is it 5? Or should we say 10? What are you feeling?
What are we saying? Are we saying a 50 billion black hole, or maybe 60? Who knows? But even if it goes as much as 10 million, we stand to make billions in
on a longer
deals.
term.
Yeah,
return.
In a longer term. So is it worth it?
So, yes, is my short answer to that particular question of for a couple of days of some literal physical expense for a longer ROI, return on investment, yes, is my very definitive answer to that. But there are 2 other points that I would like to make in what you've said, because of course I see, you know, as exciting as these photos are of this great long table and the opulence and, you know, the dresses and, you know, the jewels and the tiaras and the gloves and all the rest of it, which was so divorced from, you know, 99.9% of whatever anybody, you know, themselves were going through on a Wednesday evening.
I always wear my tiara at home.
I mean, just for the housework, no? Bit of ironing, bang on the tiara, short full-length gown. I would say that actually there is, to return to this point of, but it's a thing the country can deliver and achieve. Like I say, even though I myself didn't, you know, see or hear the kind of beating of the retreat that was done on Wednesday evening. Still, when I saw some coverage of it and listened to it on the radio, I was still just tremendously proud and thought, gosh, we do this well when we do it. And also for the delivery of all of it, be it any of those the soldiers involved in kind of the circumstance of the beating of the retreat and the honorary guard and all the rest of it, and all of the putting together of the state banquet dinner on the Wednesday, and actually all of the extra police that were out on the streets, not just on Wednesday, but actually I assume through Thursday and until Trump leaves. If we're talking about pure economics, actually there are a bunch of people involved involved in putting it together who are part and parcel of the economic benefit of it, if that makes sense. It's not just sunk costs. Like, the British government hasn't just sat there and chucked the 10 or the 20 whatever million it is kind of out their door. There have been an enormous number of other people involved who will, I'm not quite describing a kind of 1980s trickle down effect, but this isn't just money that was hemorrhaged out there on the promise of a hope of any of these kind of tech details. There is a more immediate, I think, both national psyche benefit and economic benefit to it as well. So all in all, I'm no pro-Trumpian person. Yes, I'm kind of broadly pro-royal family, but not like wholeheartedly. Yeah. But kind of even given both of those lukewarmish feelings, actually I'm pretty proud, maybe borderline excited a little bit about what Britain has pulled off since Trump has been here, and some of the dividends it may hopefully reap onwardly.
Well, Keir Starmer's going to be literally banking on those dividends coming, because otherwise he's done for.
Well, I mean, I think he's done for anyway, but that's a sort of slightly separate conversation.
I've called next spring. But there you go. Amy, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie, and with me is Amy Fisher, a former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. We're looking at the Boston Globe. It's obviously way too early to see any reflection of what happened in the UK, if indeed there is one. I mean, I was talking to Washington yesterday saying, oh, actually, it's not really making the news over here that much because of everything else that is going on there. So we'll wait and see. I'm sure they love those pictures as much as Donald Trump, and I'm also sure that they know that Donald Trump would want those pictures shown. So
a lot of mutual sort of appreciation, quite literally,
which shouldn't be the case in media, but unfortunately it is over there. We've got the Boston Globe in front of us now, and it's a pretty mixed, as usual, it's a pretty mixed front page. They're looking at the Israeli ground troops invading Gaza City. Thousands of Palestinians flee, others hunker down in battered neighbourhoods. And this is, the story that was big news on Tuesday, wasn't it? That Israel had said, no, we're going to continue with this, even though people in their own camp had said this is not a good idea. The
and
IDF
now,
has said.
And now a body of the UN has also said what Israel is doing is genocide.
Yes, I mean that is significant.
But no one's beating. No, they didn't beat around the use of that word as.
And it's a specific word, specifically used
in very specific
like
purposes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the images there. I mean, just a horrendous situation for these people for so long. I mean, not only were they abused by Hamas, and lived the life of squalor because of Hamas, and now this is happening to them because of Israel. It's really.
Well, I mean, there's quite literally nothing to say. These are people being hounded from pillar to post, and when they move from one to other, the disease, food, humanitarian issues being faced. Nothing seems to be getting any better. It was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. There were some there were some pretty strong words. Well, it was the French who came out first and was like, no, actually, we're kind of not going along with this anymore. We're going to recognise the Palestinian state.
Yeah.
Britain then did follow war, and maybe about a day or 36 hours later. I mean, the Americans never particularly got around to say anything, but it did look like a few key people in Europe were very much coalescing into a position of really making Israel just take a step, just take your a foot off the pedal, like a little bit here.
It's clear there is going to be, as far as Israel is concerned, no two-state solution.
And then nothing happened. I mean, we have got this, the meeting happening in about a week's time, but in this intervening period, not only has nothing got any better, it's gotten worse, because Israel have been even more aggressively driving people into a particular patch of land, which in and of itself is not secure, does not have medical supplies, does not have the right amount of food or clean water supplies. I think it was literally a week ago I was on your programme, we were discussing how Israel had just bombed Qatar, a third-party state. Obviously they were bombing Hamas, but they were bombing Hamas in a third-party...
In a sovereign country.
In a sovereign country. And, one is slightly... And then Herzog was, the Israeli president, was here a couple of days ago, which actually went relatively under the radar because, Keir Starmer, had run into the nightmare of Peter Mandelson being dismissed as the American ambassador. All I mean is, look, yes, there is another awful photo of a crying, displaced child on the front of the Boston Globe, and I'm thinking once again, how many more awful photos of essentially a dying kid is it going to take?
But the trouble is,
before anything.
We're becoming inured to it as well. I mean, it's like, in the, let's say the 90s, 2000s, when Israel was being bombed all the time and buses were being blown up and all of that, if you remember.
Yeah.
It just got to the point where it's another bus. How many people this time? 14, 20? No, it's not enough.
Look, I take your point, but this photo on the front of the Boston Globe is awful. It's sort of, it is reminiscent of those photos again. What was it, the 80s Ethiopian famine? Do you remember that?
Yeah,
there was the crows or the vultures kind of stalking the child. That was kind of a photo. I mean, it's won the Pulitzer Prize and all the rest of it, and it sort of was widely credited for actually making a bunch of people in the West go, oh my God. But I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe this is just another photo in a long line, in and of itself, capturing the real horror that is happening on the ground. But we're just kind of used to it now because it's been a few years since the Hamas raid on the music concert, which is when the Israeli hostages were first taken. But yeah, for me personally, not only has there not been any de-escalation in the last couple of weeks, since, as I say, there were a few strong, there was a material shift in what, as I say, France, Germany and the UK were saying about the recognition of a Palestinian state, but since then not only has there not been de-escalation, there's been additional aggression.
Yeah, absolutely, completely. There has been. It's just a horrific situation, and the West Bank, of course, now is being attacked more as well. So it's from both sides, really. Another story, of course, let's just go to the bottom of the page here, because some of these are very specifically local, local America. Commanding presence on and behind the screen, of course, referring to Robert Redford, who died at the age of 89. He was beautiful, wasn't he?
He was, but there's a very weird thing that happens, Petrie, when you realise that at some point you've shared the same crush as your mother. Which is what, it's not a comfortable place to be in.
Not a comfortable place.
Robert
better than your father, maybe.
Oh, you had to take it one step further. No, when, you know, obviously it's sort of heyday was maybe the 70s with what, you know, Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid and that kind of thing. But then, you know, even in the 90s when he did, you know, I remember what a you know, massive film, Indecent Proposal with Demi Moore. I think it was early 90s, Demi Moore and a very young Woody Harrelson. And yeah, that's when, I don't want to labour this point actually, but no, the guy was not only very easy on the eye, but was an exceptional director actually, but also, you know, he could hold his own on the silver screen, which made that actually Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids with Paul Newman, because they were both so brilliant. Yeah. And they both actually so clearly enjoyed each other's company. There was a real...
I love that film. It's a real feel-good film.
Well, I mean, the part of the felt they sort of die at the end.
Yeah, but still, even then, it's joyful.
There was the camaraderie and, no, you go first. No, I can't swim. Yeah.
It's just joyful. Right, let's get to the UK papers. The Sun newspaper, superb photograph there, actually. Good heavens, Melania's smiling. That's not something you see.
I think she looks lovely.
She does look lovely, but I mean, I'm not sure about the dress. When I first saw it, you liked it, but when I first saw the dress, I thought, because I didn't see I thought the pink belt was that she was wearing a crop top and a skirt.
That would have been
but that's what I thought she was wearing.
Protocol. I sort of read a little about this an hour or so ago. She's not breaking any protocol rules by showing her shoulders, because I think it was after Meghan Markle wore a slightly off-the-shoulder sort of lavender kind of coat dress to, I think it was Trooping of the Colour in about 2018. Like, you're not offending anybody by showing your shoulders in front of the royals, and then as the rest of it, she's got long sleeves. It is actually very modest. It is full length. You know, it is kind of corseted. It's not sort of billowing. You are sort of meant to have something that's apparently quite waisted. And I thought she was lovely. It was a slightly, when I first looked at it, I thought, oh, slightly Teletubbies colour palette. But no, on balance, I quite liked it. I thought that was a brilliant photo. They all look genuinely
happy, actually.
Yeah, there's real, like, literally beaming going on there. So yes, I thought that was a nice photo.
The other thing is, I suppose that, you know, did she wear that colour to clash with Donald Trump's skin or to match it?
Compliment. I mean, he does have the.
I'm just asking.
He does have the whitest teeth. I mean, of all of them. I mean, hers are pretty, but he does have a particular spot. And then also, if you look at down the bottom of the Sun, it says, "Prez hails UK at banquet and band plays 007." I understand there's a little jazz arrangement of some 007 tunes, which sounds. Sounds quite jolly.
Quite jolly. Well, look, they look genuinely very happy, and. Yeah, even Queen Camilla, who, bless her, she's not been very well. She had sinusitis.
A couple of days ago, she had to put out of her engagement. I think she looks lovely as well. I mean, Charles regularly is on the sort of, you know, world's best dressed, you know, GQ type list. He looks very dapper. I mean, Trump looks sort of Trumpian. And yeah, Melania, I quite liked the look.
Yeah. And it's funny because my producer Gabriella was like, she's not wearing a necklace. And looking at the size of her earrings,
I was just say, if you've got like an emerald like that, you don't need any other accoutrement. I'm feeling
they are stunning, absolutely stunning. But I wear mine like that when I'm doing the washing up as well.
Sure.
Let's take a break. Back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, you are with Talk and you're with Petrie and Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party, going through the papers for Thursday. The same photograph actually of the four of them, the King, the Queen, the President and the First Lady. A really very, very lovely picture, and we are kin, King tells Trump. So, you know, this soft power that Charles has, he's really using it to the max. So we wait and see what that brings us. But the story that I'm most interested in is this one at the bottom here. Because, again, you know, you worked at the Home Office as well as comms for the Tories. I mean, I've always considered the Home Secretary's job to be a poison chalice. It seems to be the one that nobody particularly wants, because you don't think the only one who did any good was Theresa May, potentially.
But this goes right to the heart.
Yeah, this story goes right to the heart of it. Yvette Cooper must be, yes, I'm out of there. Because not a single plane that has taken off, we've had 3 planes take off that were commissioned to fly people to France who were here in this one in, one out deal. Not a single person has gone.
And in the horror show, there's been, what, the last 10 days since Angela Rayner had to resign, Peter Mandelson, the American ambassador, had to be sacked, the reshuffle that kind of wasn't really, you know, was it Titanic? You know, the one thing that the government sort of kept coming back to, and as soon as actually they started to say on broadcast, I was wincing, they were going, no, but we are delivering, you know, we're putting the best people in the best jobs, and, you know, we're about to have the first deportations back under one another. And as soon as somebody said that a week ago, I literally, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just not. And you're absolutely right about the Home Office, because I remember when, you know, I was there with Amber Rudd when she was Home Secretary, and I remember going in, and obviously, I mean, it's just terrifying. It's an absolutely sort of, you know,
it's a huge brief.
It's a huge brief. I mean, for years there have been very valid discussions about whether, you know, literally immigration as a whole should be its own department. I have some sympathy for that, but I just remember going in and a former Perm Sec actually said to me, you see, the thing is, Amy, it's not that all of the civil servants are, you know, kind of intrinsically somehow, you know, against the Home Secretary of whatever hue it is. Yours happens to be a Conservative. Who just said, at any one moment on any given day in that building, there will be 40 people working on a policy that will destroy your Home Secretary, if not the government. And the problem is they don't even know it because they're not doing it maliciously.
Oh, God.
But there was no
concern.
No, but I just kind of went. I did the kind of nervous nod. I was just like, no, I'm just saying this not to scare you. I mean, you're terrified already. Not to scare you, but that is the scale of it. And it's not that there are kind of dark forces working to frustrate whichever Home Secretary it is on, you know, whether it's knife crime or domestic violence or immigration. It's so vast and so complex, and people sometimes might be trying to do the very best of things, with the worst of unintended consequences, which brings me back to exactly this. So these deportations are, look, we, the Labour government, yes, we know it's been difficult, but we are getting on top of things. We are going to start getting rid of people. Oh, no, we're not. Why? We've been frustrated. Couple of reasons. We've heard quite a bit about, you know, the perennial human rights stuff stops, you know, Britain, again, a government of any hue getting rid of people. But this particular story the Times is talking about is on the basis of the Modern Slavery Act.
Yes, it's nothing to do with the ECHR, which
nothing
most people
to do.
are blaming.
That's why I wanted to make that distinction completely clear. And if we bear in, and this is what I mean about, let's sort of, you know, Theresa May has been widely recognised as one of the most successful, I mean, she was there for an awful long time apart from anything else, most successful and widely respected across all parties, you know, Home Secretary, and her big sort of her big sort of Trump policy was the Modern Slavery Act, which we've known, which for ages you kind of, even when I was there with Amber, you sort of weren't allowed to ask too many questions about it because it was kind of unicorn of brilliant legislation. Not denying that, of course, its purpose was absolutely right, was absolutely groundbreaking and unique, and was for the first time really trying to get to the heart of essentially
human trafficking.
Human trafficking and the onward consequences of human trafficking. But there were always problems with it. There was, the government itself even said a couple of months ago, the national referral mechanism, which is sort of basically a checklist. I don't mean to say that to diminish it, but it's sort of a list of things you go through if you're in the NHS or you're in the police or any sort of frontline service where somebody presents and you think they might be a victim. And in fact, banks might even use it if it looks like someone's being coerced and their money isn't being quite used as they would want it to. So it's sort of national referral mechanism. It's the gateway into which if somebody believes that you might be a victim of modern slavery, that then it can open up other public services being able to come and look and help you. I mean, the government a couple of months ago said, yeah, it's really imperfect, we probably need to have a look at it. So it's only just now, about a decade after the event, that people are kind of saying, yes, it was tremendously important, but we also need to have an honest conversation about the fact it wasn't the silver bullet. A very good place to start on a horrible bit of abuse and human trafficking that hadn't really been specifically looked at. And this is certainly not to actually particularly criticise, let alone unpick Theresa May's legacy, but we do need to have some honesty about this particular bit of legislation, because
this is being used to keep this Eritrean man. And do you know, I can't help but feel, and maybe I am just far too cynical, that a lawyer has gone to him and said,
have you tried this?
Have you tried this?
Yes, of course they have done.
Because I don't think he would naturally have thought, oh, I was subject to modern slavery. I think that somebody's gone to him and said... This is just another...
I don't know how to describe it with... So there are certain lawyers who are certainly not shy of suggesting to potential clients, by the way, have you tried this? We've had
success with
it before. So the kind of classic one was, have you ever considered that you're homosexual?
Yeah.
Because I understand that in your country, let's just say, I don't know, Nigeria or Uganda, being homosexual is cause for persecution. And you then suddenly do find these odd cases where, somebody who very much hasn't ever been homosexual it's suddenly sort of saying, oh, but this has been the cause of my 7 years persecution. So
shouldn't lawyers
in that sense, are you suggesting lawyers have some sort of professional morality?
Yeah.
Was that what you were going with that?
I wasn't going with the morality because I knew that would be stupid. What I was thinking is, if a lawyer is found to have advised a client to lie, then they should be struck off.
But that's always, I completely agree in theory, but that's going to be a completely impossible thing to ever prove, which is why you get these cases where, look, there are a certain number of law firms that represent certain groups of people, and everyone within the system knows everyone's lying. Everyone knows what this law firm is about.
But they're making money out of the British taxpayer, and they don't care.
No. And as I say, within the kind of cottage industry of it, like it's known, like which law firm will represent which groups of people from which countries, having advised them which particular persecution or which particular frankly loophole they should be exploiting. And as I say, this is the sadness of it. The Modern Slavery Act, in principle and large parts of it in practice, genuinely transformational. It's now just really unfortunate. There are bits that weren't perfect, and that's fine. No bit of legislation which was as grand in its scope and as transformational as I said this was going to be. So there are bits that need to be fixed, but then also, unfortunately, in the meantime, it's being specifically exploited for immigration. I only go as far as say nefarious immigration claims.
Yeah, I mean, so it's the lawyers' fault, because, like I said, they're going up, like you said, they're going up to these people and saying, "Have you thought about this?" But he's said that he was a victim of modern slavery during his journey through Sudan, Libya to Europe, and the problem with that is that he will not be able to provide any evidence of it, even if it is true, and we just have to take his word for it. That's the issue, isn't it? Let's move on. The paper, Diplomat King urges Trump to stand up to Putin tyranny. Again, by actually not emphatically, not saying it in words, but in massaging Donald Trump's wish to be this peacemaker president.
I mean, but that, if you know, and but again, we've sort of discussed this before. The problem with one of the difficulties with Donald Trump is, he's like this cushion. He bears the imprint of the last person who sat on him. So whilst he's here and all of this soft diplomacy, kind of soft messaging, coaxing, for want of another word, I'm absolutely sure that it will all be very positive at the time for the next 36 hours. That is no guarantee of any sort of metaphorical physical handshake of something he might say regarding Putin in a week. Yeah,
it's very true. It's very, very true. So that's the eye. The Daily Express, again, showing that stock, that must be their stock picture, right? That's the press pack, or the one member of the press, or the royal photographer taking this and handing it on to the press pack outside and saying, "This is all you're getting." My respect for you and Britain. That's the words of Donald Trump. The Guardian. It looks like a fake picture, but I don't think it is.
No, so this is when they were in
the carriage.
Exactly, the carriage on the way to Windsor Castle. So this is the only. So there was no one else in the carriage with them at all. Not like a footman or an aide or whatever.
There's one on the back.
You would call it, but no one physically within the actual carriage itself. And one does sort of wonder if we will get any kind of inkling of what they actually discussed.
Never. Well, Trump might say,
I was about to say, I don't think. I mean, Charles obviously won't, and I don't think the palace isn't going to kind of release notes or any kind of "it was understood, they discussed" type stuff. But Trump is Trump, so he's got a kind of press conference tomorrow, and you just literally never quite know what he might.
Which is why nothing will have been said.
When my great friend Charles and I were in the carriage yesterday at Windsor,
he cracked a joke.
Or he said, well, I don't know, but I did think that was I did think that. But yes, I assume that's why Charles probably would have been a bit like, windy today.
Windy today. I mean, the interesting thing that I have to question is, that Donald Trump was put in a carriage for the sake of being put in a carriage, because they weren't very far away from where they needed to be at the Quad, not through crowds.
No, it was quite sanitised.
Yeah, which if it had been at Buck House, would have been impossible to do. So I wonder if he's clocked that this was a very different state, a very controlled state visit, so that he didn't see.
I mean, not that control, because there was the photos of Epstein and Trump and Prince Andrew being.
But he wouldn't have seen those.
But he must have heard about it, surely.
I don't know. Do people tell him that stuff?
I kind of
my favourite story about that with Windsor is that these protesters, they made up mugs with pictures of Epstein and Trump, and a sort of dining plate with all the gold and things with a similar image on it, and then they went into the gift shop at Windsor Castle
and just planted them
in there, and it looks like they're selling them.
Brilliant.
And there were loads of people saying, "I'd actually buy them if they were on sale."
Well, this is the thing.
Absolutely brilliant protest.
It's kind of big. It's slightly unclear to me what happened to the. Because it was initially reported that 4 people had been arrested for projecting this sort of 20-foot
under malicious communications, which they'll never get done for that.
Up.
No, it won't.
And there hasn't been anything since then, because in terms of protests, entirely non-violent, there wasn't actually damage to property, because it's not. It was a production.
And the photographs are public
And the public domain, they're not AI, they're not...
there's nothing they can be done for,
so I
was
surprised when a statement had been released with such alacrity saying they've been detained under malicious communications.
Which is nonsense.
My first thought thing was, that's not a thing.
They weren't even trespassing, they were in the hotel across the street.
Exactly. I thought it was a pretty clever protest, actually.
I thought it was absolutely, it was just funny. I mean, it's okay, you know, a lot of people saying it was disrespectful.
Well,
so was having a really close relationship with a paedophile.
Yes.
I mean, I'd say that was slightly more disrespectful. But anyway, those photos weren't faked; they were real.
No,
there was no malicious.
Well, as I thought, I thought it was pretty well done. If you wanted to make that kind of protest, I think that's the way you'd execute it.
Yeah, and nobody got hurt, and Trump wouldn't even have known about it. Quick break. Amy and I'll be back in a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, it's Talk and it's Petrie, and with me is Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. We've made it all the way to the Independent, which is showing another official photograph. That's the other thing, is that they were able to control the press, they were able to control the photographers that were there. So this is the official photograph of them standing undercover at the Quad, watching the guardsmen march past.
I mean, these guards are, I don't know if you have ever been to, you know, sort of trooping the colour or anything like that. I've been kind of once or twice, but, you know, when the British military get their stuff going, it really is pretty...
It's incredibly impressive.
It is pretty impressive, genuinely sort of
spine. And I think these are Coldstream Guards. I think the Coldstream Guards led off the parade, and they were the lifeguards as well. You can tell by what they wear on their heads, mostly. So I think that's the Coldstream Guards there. Eyes left, or eyes right. Which way would have been left? That's an honour to the President for them to eyeball him as they walk past.
And he looks like he's eyeballing them back in that photo.
Yeah, he does.
That's peak Trump, I'm the statesman type vibes he's giving off there.
It really is, because he towers above King Charles, doesn't he? Absolutely towers.
Yeah.
Financial Times, Trump in the UK, day of pomp and protest. This is an image of Trump walking, inspecting the garbage. I mean, he didn't inspect it, he just walked. But again, I found it really bizarre that he walked in front of King Charles.
Ah, but they specifically said that had been, a done thing, because last time he was here, he just sort of
marched in front of the
Queen. Off and started chatting, and that was a breach of protocol. So just to kind of make it easier for everybody, they kind of this time just said, oh, well, you know, Trump will go first, and then...
It just looks wrong. To see
I mean,
the king
it looks a bit peculiar.
I'm not even a monarchist,
no,
but it looks weird.
But then this is what the palace does sometimes, because absolutely.
So as not to embarrass him.
So as not to embarrass everybody. Absolutely, years ago, I used to work at Google, and the sort of only UK headquarters they had at the time were just at Buckingham Palace Gate, and the Queen was going to come, and this was like basically the first kind of real tech. She was going to open up. Was it she was going to open the royal YouTube account or something? As in, she was literally going to press, you know, the button. And so obviously the place was in an absolute state of heightened kind of frenzy, and loads of Americans had flown over because they didn't trust us poor Brits to, you know, be able to well, actually that might have been a fair point. But then when the people from the palace came down to brief everyone, they just sort of said, well, when Philip, you know, when the king, because it actually was also pretty unique because the two of them were coming together, and we were specifically told, yes, this is the route for the Queen. This is the aide that's always going to be with her. You know, this would always be. I was actually kind of the point person. You always be the point person. They just said, yeah, Prince Philip, he will just wander off.
Oh,
like just you can't like that, don't get freaked out as long as like eyes are always on the Queen and you're following the route with the Queen. That's just your entire focus. And duly enough, you know, I remember it was obviously a long time ago now, but Philip sort of came in, I mean, beautifully dressed, utterly charming, walking around, the two of them being shown various, you know, whizzy bits of tech and all the rest of it. And it being Google, you know, in the kind of mid-early 2000s, whereby it was all just sort of cool to like rock up to work in your jeans and your ripped Dire Straits t-shirt or whatever. I mean, Prince Philip just literally wandered up and walked over to some poor engineer and just like, do you always come to work dressed like that? He didn't even really wait for an answer. He then just kind of walked off and went, and you, what are you doing on this gadget? And it was quite distracting because yes, you were still with the Queen, showing her everything as just this like 6'2" guy, terribly patrician, I think charming, but was just literally this clip-clocky.
But that's why we loved him.
Clip-clocky kind of leather-soled shoes, was just striding around like essentially creating havoc, but everyone was trying to play it very cool because there's the Queen that we're looking after, but
I think that's why we love. I mean, I thought he was great.
He was charming. He wasn't being difficult. He wasn't being rude. He just wanted to go off and be interested in his own thing. And if something caught his eye over here, he was going to go and ask about that. He genuinely was baffled by the kind of engineer contingent who were very, you know, grungy jeans and kind of heavy metal t-shirts and that sort of thing. But yeah, you just had to leave him.
You've never seen it before.
You lived into him.
Prince Philip used to drive around in a London cab.
We've been briefed to expect that.
Yeah. But I remember doing a phone-in at a different radio station a while ago saying, have you ever been insulted by a famous person? Have you ever been offended with a... well, actually, it was my... senior, not my programme producer, but the boss of us, who said, look, you can get a phone in going. I want you to do something a bit difficult. So she gave me this topic, and it was because some kid had tried to hand the Queen some flowers, and the Queen looked like she'd snubbed the kid or whatever. So it was that. So that was the basis of it. Have you ever been offended by a royal? And the number, or a famous person, and the number of people who rang and said, Prince Philip driving his London cab around London.
Never heard this.
Oh yeah, he had his own cab, and he would drive it around London because it gave him freedom. He
I
loved
understand.
that. Right?
I mean, I can completely. I've never heard it. I can completely believe
it. He was
it.
incredibly rude. And there would be people, I don't know if it's true because I wasn't there, but saying, oh yeah, I mean, he flipped me the bird one time, or somebody
Again,
saying,
I can slightly see
I
it.
can slightly see it. And, you know, traffic lights cutting in front of people.
Again,
you can completely see
it.
it. But yeah, he was a real character, and I think the royal family really lost somebody very special. I mean, look, he was a diplomatic nightmare.
Yes.
But yeah, apparently he used to flip the bird at people on.
Yeah,
he was
I
driving
will
his
look
cab
that
around.
up on the way home because now you said it, I don't disbelieve it at all. In fact, I can
he had a
entirely...
London cab that he would drive around fairly anonymously. You know, people don't really look at. Bless you, I love the London taxi drivers. I really genuinely do, as they know. But a lot of people. You wouldn't look necessarily at the driver.
Straight in the face,
yeah.
no.
I mean, obviously he never picked up a fare. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he didn't. No, he didn't. He didn't pick up a fare, but he had his own cab. So yeah. Let's have a look at the Daily Star news. We know this by now, people. With a wink. Heir to the throne. A picture of not a very flattering picture of Charles and Trump with their. It was windy today.
It
with
was,
their hair
also,
blowing everywhere.
As we were saying in the break, Trump is 79, Charles is 76. I mean, they're not that on hirsute for men of a certain age.
No, they're both sort of doing okay.
And I think probably King Charles is a lot maybe more real than a lot of Trump's is.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not a very flattering picture. But like you said, it just looks like two old men on a park bench.
And they've both got those chubby little fingers.
They have both got the chubby fingers. And was it King Charles? Sausage fingers.
Sausage fingers, yeah. They're both famously known to have quite small hands.
Small hands and chubby
little fingers.
Well, on that note, let's just end by insulting the King and the President of the United States. I mean, why not? Nothing wrong with a chubby finger. Well, Amy, thank you.
Pleasure, very nice to see you.
Amy Fisher, former Director of Comms for the Conservative Party. Right, coming up, it's just you and me. And I do want to ask you about the pomp and ceremony of yesterday, or what will be yesterday by the time we get there. And I want to ask you a question about the royal family. Are you a supporter of the royal family, or are you not really not bothered either way? But when you see things like today and you understand what they had to go through to get Donald Trump on our side, do you now think that they are worth the money, that they have that value, that soft power, which, as Amy and I were saying earlier, is impossible to measure? It's one of those things you can't tell. You know it works, but you don't know why, really, and you don't know how valuable it is. We'll be talking about that in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it is Petrie with you until 1 o'clock, and now we're into Thursday. This, of course, is the second day of the state visit, the second day of the second state visit for Donald Trump. Today he will be heading off to Chequers at some point for the sort of political chats, if you like, and the reason it's at Chequers is because Keir Starmer doesn't particularly want Donald Trump to see any protests that might be going on. And you can see why. I mean, look, this is supposed to be, you know, getting him on side, making sure that he favours us in some way. I mean, I find it a little bit sycophantic, but I do understand why, right? I totally get why. Donald Trump loves all this attention. We know that. He loves to feel special. He made much about it today in his speech, how this was only the first president to ever do a second state visit, which was helped by the fact that he didn't have 2 consecutive terms, but still, it is unprecedented. So he spoke about that in his speech at the banquet, and also how it was very special staying at Windsor, because of course past presidents would have stayed at Buckingham Palace because it was open at that point. So he was very pleased with himself, and we know that if you flatter Donald Trump, if you tell him how wonderful he is. I mean, Zelensky had to have lessons from the rest of the European leaders as to how to treat Donald Trump. There's a specific way, and we've seen Keir Starmer do it, right? Which I thought was particularly unedifying and really grovelly when sat in the Oval Office, Keir Starmer then goes, "Oh, we've got this, you know, amazing offer," and Trump pretended he didn't know anything about it, and he said, "I've got a letter from the king," and it was all like, "Oh, have you? That, you know, great," and then opened it, and it was like, "This is the first time, Mr. President, that we've ever invited," you know, it was all that, wasn't it? Do you remember? It absolutely made me cringe. At the same time, it's easy to see why you've got to treat him like that, because Zelensky didn't. Do you remember that horror show where Zelensky was just a very tired, very scared, very passionate, very annoyed war president with his country being bombarded by the aggression of Russia, and Donald Trump wasn't hearing him and going, "You don't hold any of the cards." So Zelensky had to be told how to manage Donald Trump and Donald Trump's ego. And you can see it as well during his cabinet meetings. I don't know if you've seen these, but honest to goodness, it's horrific. There's Donald Trump sitting there with all his team around him, and they just spend 3 hours telling him how brilliant he is. Not talking about policy, not discussing the country, but telling him how wonderful he is. So these are the mechanisms of Donald Trump. This is what works with Donald Trump. And it's not just me saying that. This is what works. You see it in his own cabinet meetings. This is what makes Donald Trump tick, to be told how wonderful and special he is. He comes from millionaire families. His family have told him that his whole life. People have told him that his whole life, right? So he loves it. So the king extending the invitation, it didn't come from the king. Of course it didn't come, well, I mean, it was his letterhead. But, you know, it came from government. They went, "Look, we're in trouble here with Donald Trump. We need to get him on side. He's been pretty negative about the UK and about, you know, the rest of people in NATO and the rest of people in Europe. We need to butter him up a bit. This is diplomacy. This is what it is." And so they extended this visit, and here he is. And he had a wonderful time today, feeling very special indeed. And even during the speeches, the king was complimentary, all of those things. And even if the king doesn't particularly like Donald Trump. I don't know. I've heard that they're politically very divided, but you know, the king is a diplomat. He knows his job. His job, at the request of his government, was to butter up Trump so that we don't get treated as badly as other countries are treated over tariffs or finances or whatever else. And also, of course, to get him on side to support Ukraine, to continue to support Ukraine. So this was a big visit. I mean, it's a short visit as far as state visits go, but it's massively important, not just to Britain, but to the Russia-Ukraine war, you know, potential sanctions. It's important to potentially Israel and Palestine. And it seems to have worked thus far. We're expecting today, later on today, at those political, it's already been leaked, of course, but, you know, we're going to hear that we've got billions of dollars coming in to the UK from American tech companies. And these were, I understand, were at the request of Donald Trump. Donald Trump and his people went to these tech companies and said, hey, you know, how do you feel? This is the story anyway. How do you feel about investing in the UK? Now, they would have Meta probably would have invested here anyway, because they need these data banks all over Europe. But that's not to say that this isn't incredibly welcome to the UK economy. It won't be billions in one lump. It'll be over a few years. I don't know what benefit it'll have to the likes of you and me, but it's a positive move. What else Keir Starmer can get out of him, I don't know. And what we're having to pay to get that tech money, I also don't know. There will be a cost. Donald Trump doesn't give anything for nothing, ever. Art of the deal, you know? So American tech companies have been pressuring, or trying to pressure, UK governments to relieve them of their tax burden when they're in the UK. It's worth a lot of, I think it's in the region, I can't remember, I think it's about 100 million a year, something like that in tax, that goes straight into us, right? Will they be relieved of that 100 million? The devil is always in the detail. So everybody's going, oh, these deals are going to be fantastic. Oh my goodness, they're going to be great. If they get tax relief and we lose that money coming in yearly, the other thing that American tech companies have been begging for is to lower restrictions on AI. They want a free-for-all in AI. So watch out for that being a potential cost for getting these business deals. I'm telling you, they will come at a cost, and it won't be cheap. So it's nothing's for nothing, right? So it's then up to us to decide whether it's actually a good deal or a bad deal. But it'll sound good, right? It already sounds good, doesn't it? Oh, look, 31 billion pouring into the country. It's not for nothing, I promise you. But all of this, if we've got Trump on side, we don't know how long that'll last, maybe until he gets back onto Air Force One, maybe a bit longer. We don't know, because he does flip-flop, he does change his mind quite often, as does Keir Starmer. But when you see what the Royals did today, do you think that makes them worth the cost? Even if you're a staunch Republican, and I don't mean as in Republican as an American Republican, I mean somebody who believes in a republic rather than a monarchy. Do you watch this and go, do you know what? Actually, maybe this was worth it. Maybe this soft power that the royal family used to great effect is worth it for us to, it's worth having a royal family just for this. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Right, let's talk to Grace, who's in Ealing. Morning, Grace.
Morning, hi.
Hi. Do you think that it was worth it?
Well, it's hard to say at the moment because we don't really know what's going to happen next, but I would guess probably not. It was nice to see people seemingly getting on fairly amicably, given how hostile everything else is at the moment. But you can't take anything Trump says seriously. I mean, he had a state visit previously, and it didn't cause him to have any more, decency or manners. And he relentlessly goes back on his word. He's completely confused about various things. I mean, you mentioned Ukraine a moment ago, and he said that he was going to end the war, and he's not only not achieved that, he's quite happy to just roll over for Putin. And he said also that he thinks that if he can end the war, then that will get him into heaven. So whether or not he actually wants to end the war for the sake of the human beings who are suffering, or whether he just thinks it will win him some kind of eternal prize is unclear to me. He's also wrong theologically. The Bible doesn't say that you get into heaven by achieving things. It says you can only get in if you choose to follow Jesus. And you would have thought that Trump would have the opportunity to learn that, given that he's got supposed spiritual advisors around him. But he's ultimately doing everything for his own ends. He only cares about his own ego and what he can get out of things. So he's quite happy when he's having his ego stroked like he was this evening. But whether or not in the long term any of this will actually make any impact on the decisions he makes and his policies is not something I have much hope for.
Yeah, I'm with you, Grace, in that. Look, I think that he always says that he has fondness for Britain, but is very quick to sort of, accuse us of not having any freedom of speech, etc. At the same time,
well, who needs speech when you can project him and Epstein onto Windsor Castle? That was brilliant.
I mean, that is a brilliant protest, whether you agree with it or not. That is a brilliant that is the point of protest as well, is to not agree with it. That's why it's protest. I thought it was brilliant, and I don't think that the charges will stand up. I can't imagine the charges standing up. It wasn't a malicious communication in any way that I understand a malicious communication. But yeah, I mean, I do worry that Trump will be sat on, perhaps even on Air Force One. Do you know what I mean? Somebody going, oh, those Brits, they're taking the mick. They want this, they want everything from us, and we're not going to give it, are we, Donald? And then he'll go, oh yeah, no, you're right. Well, let's not.
Yeah, he's just an overgrown child, I'm afraid. So many of the things he said in his speech, they sounded very nice, but they were just completely nonsensical given his actual actions. He talked about how great it is that we have this scientific heritage, but this is a man who said that people should drink bleach and who rejects the consensus on climate change
and proposed RFK Jr.
Yeah, and is now seriously dismantling scientific institutions. There have been research projects, including some whereby British children with severe allergies have been enrolled in programs to try and find treatments for them, and he has terminated those programs. He is so anti-science, it's laughable, and there he stands in Windsor talking about how great our scientific heritage is. He talked about how Britain and America have done great things in the world, but he ended the USA Department, so millions of people are going to die. He talks about some of our writers like Tolkien and Dickens. Now, I don't know enough about literature, but I know that Tolkien had a big point about being opposed to ego. The dangers of ego are one of the things he's touching on in Lord of the Rings. And Trump is all about ego. And Dickens, obviously, part of the message of his writing was that it's terrible when there's huge injustice in wealth distribution. But Trump is fine with massive injustice in wealth distribution. So he's standing there kind of saying all these nice things, but he doesn't believe any of it.
What's interesting, I think, about Donald Trump is that I genuinely believe that he believes what he's saying at the time. I don't think he's sitting there going, I'm going to tell the Brits I love them, but I don't. I think at the time he gets not swept up, but he believes what he's saying. He believes, yes, we do have a special relationship, and I do think that I love Britain and I love the British and I love. I think he genuinely means it, but that doesn't mean it's genuinely true. And I think if he's in company of people who hate the British, then he might be persuaded, people going, you know what it's like when you're in a group of people, and they go, oh, I really like him. And they go, really, do you like it? And then people go, oh, no, I don't actually like him that much. I think that Trump is potentially like that, but I think he means it when he says it.
Yeah, I think he's not really fully aware of what's going on beyond his own mind. I'm conscious of reading a bit about how he grew up attending a church with the false prophet, essentially, Norman Vincent Peale, who taught people that you can essentially bring about what you want with the power of positive thinking. And he seems to think that if he just, I mean, this is completely antithetical to, you know, what Christianity actually teaches. You can't just magic things out of the air. But Trump seems to think that if he says things,
it's true.
Then it's true.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. But I think he genuinely believes that. And I think it's not like he's being duplicitous. I think he absolutely, genuinely believes that is his position in life, because he's never been told no, has he? I mean, let's face it. So he probably does, you know, he probably does believe he just has to say something and it miraculously happens, because it always has.
Yeah, but then it's those who criticise him who have Trump derangement syndrome.
Yes,
obviously.
Right. And it's just the whole idea that, you know, they're worried about us being like North Korea with no freedom of speech, when Donald Trump has had a list of 63,000 people who said bad things about Charlie Kirk's death. And he's looking to take their driving licences away from them, their business licences away from them. That's not free speech. No. That's the opposite of that. Grace, look, you and I obviously often share the same, we agree on much, and I totally agree with that. That's Grace in London. Listen, give me a call. What do you think of this? Do you think that this is a good job well done that the royal family did today? Does it make them worth the money that we spend on them or give them every year? Does it make you feel warmer towards the royal family? 0344 499 1000. Just time before the break to tell you about our biggest competition to date. It's now live, and we're giving you the chance to win a whopping £25,000 plus Oasis tickets. Well, 2 lucky winners will win a pair of Oasis tickets when they return to Wembley on the 27th of September. Plus, that is not all. Alongside the tickets, we're giving one listener the chance to win that huge 25 grand. For all the details and how to enter, listen up.
18 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text the word cash to 83338 and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission. Or you can enter for free by calling 0330 880 338. All entries must be received by the 19th of September at 9 a.m. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and we are talking about the job that the royal family did yesterday. And it seems that even if you... it's difficult. Listen, I'm a sort of take it or leave it a bit with the royal family, really. I mean, I think they do... I'm not offended by them. I think that's probably, I'm sure they're really grateful, but I'm kind of not bothered either way. I don't think that they cost us that much in terms of what they do provide in soft power, and I think that yesterday's pomp and circumstance kind of proves that. That is worth. Well, we don't know what this is the thing with soft power. You can't quantify it. You can't judge just how much it's worth. But it is safe to say that getting a man like Donald Trump on side is a good thing to do. You don't want him as your enemy in terms of, you know. I mean, for example, there was an Australian journalist who, just before he took off from the US to head on Marine One to head to Air Force One to head over here, an Australian journalist, asked him a question, and he asked a question about how he felt about all the businesses that he was still running while he was President of the United States. And the President, first of all, began to answer by saying, well, my children run those businesses. And then he got really angry with this journalist. So I'm going to paraphrase because it waffles, obviously it goes on. And he basically was angry that anybody would ask him such a question, although that is the job of journalists, but he's not often got journalists around him that would ask a difficult question. And then he basically said to this Australian journalist, how are you going to feel when the whole of Australia suffers with more tariffs, right? So we know that tariffs are a weapon for Donald Trump. They are, if his ego is crushed or he's feeling upset or whatever this, he will react. And he will use economic tariffs to hurt an entire country or threaten it because of a question that one journalist from that country asked. So he's not a man that you can even, I don't think that you can even have a sensible, listen mate, kind of conversation with, right? Because he would see that as an offence, he would be immediately angry, and who knows what would happen next. So this sucking up that we saw today, and we've seen Keir Starmer do all the time, to Donald Trump, is an unnecessary evil. A necessary evil. That was my own, my own prejudices there. But this is necessary. And even I can see that, although I hate it, I can see that if we don't do this, Trump is going to make life harder for us. It's as simple as that. It shouldn't be that way, absolutely shouldn't be that way, but it is. So, was this second state visit necessary? Yes. I don't think it's deserved. Just me. And it's a bit hypocritical when you sack somebody for a close association with Jeffrey Epstein, and then the next minute you've got somebody visiting you who had just as close an association, if not closer, with the same child trafficking paedophile. So it's odd to me, but I get it. He is the President of the United States. And he got his second state visit. Would he have got it if he'd been a Obama-type president, or if it had been Kamala Harris? Well, Kamala, she was the first time round, but probably not. Okay, it wouldn't have been deemed necessary. But this was deemed necessary to keep him on side. And I thought that the royal family The royal family pulled a blinder. I think they really did. Personally, this is an opinion radio station. Personally, I would not want to spend all that time with Donald Trump. I wouldn't want to spend 5 minutes with him. He probably wouldn't want to spend 5 minutes with me, and that's fine. That's good. That's perfect. That's exactly how I want it. So I had some sympathy for the royals today, but they had to do it. That's their job. That is their job. So, give me a call. I think the royals earned their crust today, genuinely, and all those wonderful soldiers, those men and women who carried out their duties to perfection, as they always do. Tonya is in Exeter. Tonya, you don't think they are worth the money?
Yeah, well, it's not so much, no, but more, you can say what happened today, but I'm looking at the bigger picture.
Right.
As in, okay, so with the sort of plan of green globalism and collapsing the nation state, which is Keir Starmer's just a puppet to do that. He's a traitor within just collapsing everything, and that's his job. The royals are fully on board with that. I mean, they've always supported. I support real green issues, don't get me wrong, but not pretend carbon zero issues, which is all about control and digital global control, nothing to do with real environmentalism. So he's fully on board with all that. So is William. And this mass, you know, all the sort of, I mean, it's not a racist thing, but people that are getting concerned about too many people being pushed into the poorer areas and being crowded in and being in and the hotels and all that sort of thing. You know, the royals have a lot of power that we don't acknowledge. We think that we vote people in, but actually these people are the real power. They're the permanent power, okay? They're the permanent power behind the scenes and people probably behind and above them. So what have they done to provide housing? Really, I mean, I know they provide expensive housing and the duchy of this and that, but land is the big issue here, and I'm now saying the one word that's not allowed to be debated on the radio, and you'll probably have to cut me off, but housing is always mentioned, land is never mentioned, and the land issue in Britain is a real thing. And the royals, effectively, when they came over in 1066, William the Conqueror came over and took this land and stole it. Ever since, they handed out their land to all the barons, and 50% of this land in this country, no one knows who's owning it. A lot of it's gated off, these barons and lords. We're still feudal. We're still feudal Britain. And we will be feudal Britain as long as we have a royal family. And they have all this power behind the scenes. I mean, they meet with the Prime Minister. They're the ones who do the deals with the Saudis. You know, it's not Keir Starmer. It's the royals, right? They have the real power.
I think the royals. I'm not on board with the fact that the royals have any power in that regard. I think they are puppets, and they play their role well. They have power with money, but you talk about.
Do you not think wealth is power and wealth is land?
Yeah, but the land issue is an interesting one, because you say that they've got all this land, and what are they doing about housing? Well, they handed the land of the Crown Estate to government, so the government basically owns that land now. So,
yeah,
you know, I mean they own a lot. I'm not saying they don't, but the Crown Estate, which is a vast portfolio, it's valued at about £15 billion. Ever since 1760, the monarch has given the Treasury the profits from the Crown Estate in exchange for their annual grant, and there's more profit now, which is why the grant has gone up, because of all the land that's being used, and they own the sea around the country as well. Around a lot of the country as well. So all these wind farms and things like that are generating more profit. But a lot of it is not really owned by the royal family, like Buckingham Palace. It belongs to the country.
Technically, the problem is, we're not entirely. I understand what you say, but they technically, and technically the Vatican actually. But we go into what happened after 1066. They handed the crown back to the Pope, but not 10 to 6, after Magna Carta, and another law was passed and they handed the crown back to the Pope. So who knows, maybe secretly the Vatican. But the royal family did hand out this land to the barons, and they actually, that was all leased out. So technically they own the whole country, really. But all the barons and the feudal lords that dominate, the church owns quite a bit, the feudal lords own. I mean, like the area where I live is pretty much owned by lords. One particular lord who got it when it was in abeyance. He didn't even really inherit it. It was in abeyance. And, you know, Britain is like this when you get people, and then people get concerned about all these people coming in and to the poorer areas with the housing being pushed into these tiny areas. And you walk around the country areas in Devon, you'll find huge amounts of land just gated off. No one knows who's owned it. You can't go in there. You can't get in there. It's like, and many of these people are probably abroad. You know, they're probably, they're off in Saudi Arabia, wherever they are. They're not even living in Britain. And yet there's people who can't even get a house. And now I
absolutely agree with you on that. And I think that a lot of building developers have a lot to answer for because they've been legally allowed to land bank. So they buy up a lot of land and they sit on it until the value of houses goes up, which means that you never get affordable housing because these companies are not charities and they're in it to make profit, which is what annoys me when this government says we are going to build 1.5 million homes. They are not. They are asking private companies to build these homes, and these companies need to make or they believe they need to make profit. They've probably got shareholders, etc., etc., and they are land banking. It's disgraceful. I mean, I'm 100% with you on the land issue.
About the land,
it's disgusting.
It pushes the prices up.
Yeah, of course it does, because it's like diamonds. If they were all released at once, they'd be worth about a penny each. But they're only released, sporadically to keep the value high because it's a rarity value.
Well.
Exactly. But I think you and I probably agree more than I thought at the beginning. I think that we do agree on that.
I think we do, but I think we do. But on the royals, I know what you're saying. The weddings and everything and the beauty of it, and I can see that part of it. And there is part of me that goes, ooh, but I know that I'm being dragged into a theatre show as well. Okay, that it's all for us to keep this control over us, to stop us ever really having any real power ourselves. And because I'm basically an anarchist, you know what I mean? So but I can see, even I will watch a royal wedding. I'm not going to but deep down I know, my God, this is all being put on to control me. You know what I'm saying?
But and I understand that as well. The distraction techniques that these powerful people use on us. But I also believe that what the King and Queen and Prince William and Princess Kate had to do yesterday in order to stroke this man's ego is valuable. I don't know. It does have some benefit to us. That's all I'm saying.
I think I still think that Keir Starmer is definitely, he's a plant. He's not genuinely trying to help this country. Overall, his job is to collapse the nation state, and he's a communist.
Well, listen, then we can say that he's really good at his job. Because
he's very good at his job. Because people say he doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. That's what he's there to do. He's there to collapse. So he's a very intelligent man, Keir Starmer.
Yeah, well, if indeed that is true, he's doing a wonderful job. And I never thought I'd say that. Tonya, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Let's take a quick break.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good morning to you. This is Talk and it's Petrie. And we're talking about the pomp and ceremony that was put on yesterday in order to sweeten Donald Trump. And I think it was a job well done. I mean, I watched it today. Not that I naturally would, because certain things make me cross, but I did watch it because I'm a journalist and I wanted to be fair, and I wanted to watch it and see, you know, what actually happened rather than making my mind up about something I hadn't seen, which goes against everything I believe in terms of journalism. And I think that it looked like it worked. It looked like it was a really, I mean, look, we do it better than anybody. Anybody. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But it's led me to ask the question, even if you're not a fan of the royals, when you see things like this, it is evident, isn't it, that they have a role to play and that they are important. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, yeah, but, you know, they get all that money. They get, their security is separate from this, right? So any security detailing we pay for, and that is big bucks, right? If they're out working and we have to protect them. But basically, as I was just saying to Tonya, the sovereign grant, the three main sources of income that the royals have: the sovereign grant, which is what we give them, the estates of the Duchy of Lancaster and the Duchy of Cornwall, as well as personal property and investments. So I'm not suggesting for a minute that they're not incredibly wealthy. But the sovereign grant is the bit that we give them, is a percentage of the profits made by the Crown Estate. And the Crown Estate, back in 1760, all profits from the Crown Estate were handed to government, right? So the King still owns it, but it is given, all the profit is given to government. Now, it includes Regent Street in London. It's worth a heck of a lot of money. 300,000 acres of land and forest, more than half the coastal land in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, and nearly all of its seabed within 12 miles of the coast. There it racks up vast profits from offshore wind farms. So basically, the profit that is made from the Crown Estate was gifted by the royals in 1760 to government. Government then gives the royals back a percentage of that money in order to look after places like Buckingham Palace or to pay for, you know, all of that kind of thing. So basically, if they hadn't given the Crown Estate to government, they'd be getting about 1.1 billion a year profit. But they gave it to government, and government then gives them 12% back in order to... and there's estimates, I saw it earlier, £1.29 per person in terms of sovereign grant costs about 1.29 per UK citizen. That's what it costs us to give him that money. So I always find it an interesting argument that they, you know, oh, the taxpayers' money, but literally it's their money that they gave to us, and we're giving them a little bit back of it. And because the profits have gone up, the sovereign grant is going to not be, it was 86 million roughly in 24-25, and it's going to be 132 million 25-26, I think. But then it will go down, I don't know, I've been told it's going to go down again. But that's how they make that sovereign grant. So it's not, when we say it's taxpayers' money, it would have stayed with us if we didn't give them any of it back. Does that make sense? Do you see what I mean? I just wanted to make that clear. David is in Belfast. Hello, David.
Hello, Peter. I think we've got the equivalent of the Crown Disneyland for free. Millions and millions of people come to this country and spend a lot of money and go round all the Crown properties, visit them, buy stuff, pay in, use restaurants, stay in hotels. We have the most magnificent monarchy that, okay, they have to get paid to run the properties, look after the properties, but I think in real terms, people visiting the country have Disneyland, Crown, I can't say it any other way, but something like that.
Yeah, I mean, Princess Catherine is legitimately, like a Disney princess, isn't she? I mean, she's absolutely unreal, gorgeous. But a lot of people, though, David, even though I've just explained the sovereign grant, where that comes from, so it doesn't. It's not like tax. It's not like my tax is being given to the king, who's incredibly wealthy without it. It's his own money being given back to him, basically, in a smaller amount. We get to keep the rest. But a lot of people say, but he doesn't even need that. He's so rich. Why should we give him anything?
Well, at the end of the day, it's like every businessman, even like Trump, you work for it, you earn it, But in saying that, I think he puts a lot back into the country. And, okay, it may be a little bit too much, but at the end of the day, who's going to look after all these properties? Who's going to maintain it? And who's going to manage it?
I mean, Republicans would say, well, they could be handed to the National Trust, or they could be handed to other people to look after them. It's not beyond the wit of, probably is beyond the wit of government at the moment, but it's not that difficult to have these properties well looked after. But I genuinely, I think it's the soft power that is so undervalued, and what we saw yesterday was a supreme act of diplomacy.
Petra, I think it was, but I'm quite annoyed that Trump didn't go down the Mall in London. And
I think he would have liked to.
And I think it should have been done. Okay, Buckingham Palace is getting done up at the minute, but they could have put a helicopter in there and took him to Windsor after it. But he couldn't do that because of the amount of people who would have protested. And I think that's terrible.
Do you? I think that's genuine freedom. I think if you don't like something or someone, you peacefully protest. I think that's absolutely reasonable. And just because they didn't want to dent Donald's ego, they didn't drive him down the Mall. They didn't even drive him down the High Street in Windsor.
Yeah.
He had to just sort of, be in the carriage for 5 minutes, basically just going, well, it's not quite in circles, but you know what I mean, just to get the carriage ride in there. It was a joke. But
I think it just played to the protesters, and somebody needs to stand up and say, no, you can protest, but not on the route. But he should have been down the Mall, should have been in the Buckingham Palace, even though it's being rebuilt. A wee stand at the front, and people would have loved it, and they couldn't do it.
But I support the right of those protesters, and I Buckingham Palace, like you said, is being refurbed at the moment, and so he had to have a smaller state visit. Look, he got the big one last time. He's lucky to get a second one. So, and look, it still cost us a few million to put it on. But I understand what you're saying. David, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Just before we go to a break, I just want to play this. And this is King Charles at his part of his speech that he gave just before they sat down to eat at the banquet last night.
In 2 world wars, we fought together to defeat the forces of tyranny. Today, as tyranny once again threatens Europe, we and our allies stand together in support of Ukraine to deter aggression and secure peace. And our AUKUS submarine partnership with Australia sets the benchmark for innovative and vital collaboration. The successes of the British Redcoats and of George Washington's Continental Army today stand shoulder to shoulder, brothers and sisters in arms, protecting the freedoms we both cherish. Our countries are working together in support of crucial diplomatic efforts, not least of which, Mr. President, is your own personal commitment to finding solutions to some of the world's most intractable conflicts.
There you go. I wanted to play that because I wanted you to, if you hadn't heard any of the speeches, is just to hear that real gentle diplomacy that was very clever. It was very clever. The whole thing about Ukraine. He then, if you're listening on radio and not watching, he then looked for confirmation from Donald Trump. This is all really subtle psychology. To get Trump to nod about, we wanting to help Ukraine, and then, all of this, and then buttering him up. It was genius. It was a very smart speech, and that's what I'm talking about in terms of this soft power. Quick break, back in a sec. Hello, good morning. This is Talk, and it's Petrie until the top of the hour. And I want to read this. This is from Andrew in Salisbury. He said, really upset that you're on for 2 hours now, Petrie. Unless you know something I don't, which is entirely possible, because the communications in this building are shocking. It was just for this week. I think I'm back to 3 hours as of Monday. So it was just a special sort of American-led America programme because of Trump's visit. So Andrew goes on to say, I'm no royal fanatic, but I don't want to abolish the monarchy at any cost. I think as well, when William takes over, the royal family will shrink even further. I think we will end up with it's already very small, but we will end up with it being even smaller. Rachel says, I'm not a huge supporter of the Royals, but they certainly earned their keep today. I think they did. I think that would have been torture for me. No other country could match what the Royals did today. It was spectacular, and I quite enjoyed it. Good for you, Rachel. It's stunning to look at, isn't it? David said the state visit looked great, and from our point of view it's completely worth it in terms of soft power. However, it's not always the case, as I can't help recalling the visit of Putin and him being toasted by our royal family. It doesn't always pay dividends. No, it doesn't always work, does it? I mean, the poor Queen as well. I mean, she had to invite some absolute howlers, didn't she? I mean, awful people that she had to smile at. I mean, that's again the soft power. The idea that they have to have these horrible despots and autocrats and murderers, and they have to go, hi, do come in, sit down, have a cup of tea. You know, I mean, that again, I just couldn't do that. I can't hide my. I can't pretend. Cole said, I'm a royalist at heart, and the firm have done a great job when it's needed and taken one for the team. Whether the king likes or loathes him, it will gain the country the only credit it can with the US. And then Cole says, I'm sure Starmer will ruin any good vibes tomorrow. And I tend to agree. That made me chuckle when I saw that. Yeah, it's being all doer. I don't know. Maybe we're being unfair. Maybe he'll pull a blinder. I don't know. Brian has called from Whitley Bay. Brian, morning to you.
Hi, morning, Petrie. I haven't got a telly, by the way. I get all my information from the radio.
Good.
To be honest.
I always think I'm on radio.
It's been great listening to all the conversations, I'll be honest. It's been good.
Excellent.
You know, and I just think, you know, Trump loves all the pageantry and all the ceremony and pomp and everything, and it's, I just think it's a good... Not everybody agrees with Trump, by the way, but I think what we've done so far has been pretty impressive, and you know, it's bringing money into the country, you know, billions of pounds worth of trade deals, and you know, I think so far he's done quite a good job, because he really does need, you know, some good news, you know, for the Labour Party, because obviously a lot of bad stuff happened over the last few weeks, so to speak.
I mean, absolutely, and Keir Starmer is just going to really hope that you know, what happens tomorrow, he may have all the information already, but he'll be hoping that what happens later on today is that he can make these amazing announcements. But I like I said earlier, I really urge caution, because we know that Donald Trump doesn't give anything for nothing. So the small print on this won't be small, it will be expensive, and I fear that it will be to do with these tech companies' tax. And my fear is that they will be forgiven the tax that they should pay into this country, and that's worth a lot of money to us every year. So on some sort of nefarious promise that they're going to bring in over a few years, 31 billion, I think that was the number, it could be higher, 31 billion pounds or dollars into this country, how much do we lose in tax revenue from these tech companies?
Yeah, you know, we will be losing a lot, but at the same time, you know, things could be a little bit brighter, you know, when it comes to, you know, deals, and, you know, obviously we've got a decent tariff deal with, well, you know, we've got I'm not an expert, but I just know that we've got kind of quite a low tariff deal with the US. One more thing, I wish
we got the same deal as the Taliban. We got the same deal as the Taliban, 10%.
10%. Oh, right. But you know, Sadiq Khan, I just wish, you know, he's the mayor of London. He's, in my view, he's kind of like, you know, took the shine off a little bit by, you know, being silly, making silly remarks, and, you know, not behaving kind of in a responsible way. I just wish that Sadiq Khan would tone it down a little bit. You know, he's the mayor of London. Even if he doesn't agree with Donald Trump, you know, at least make a bit of effort to, you know, welcome to London, because obviously...
he was in London, wasn't he? Trump, on his first night, he stayed at the American embassy, or with the American ambassador, sorry. But yeah, I mean, look, there's a bitterness between, as we know, between Trump and Khan. No love lost there at all. And Khan was absent from the banquet. So I think probably he's feeling a little bit, sideswiped. But again, he is entitled to his opinion of the president, as we all are. But you're right. Perhaps it was unseemly. Maybe wait until he's gone, because the point is that even if you dislike Donald Trump as a statesperson, as you know, being the mayor of London, he should have realised that by insulting Donald Trump when he was on British soil wouldn't be a good idea for Britain as a country, and he should have put the country before his politics.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking on that. I don't agree with everything that Donald Trump says and does. To be honest with you, when he criticises, I mean, we've got a lot of problems in the country at the moment regarding people not able to speak freely. But even in America, if you disagree with Donald Trump, you're kind of dealt with it. He deals with it in a certain way. They lose your job, or So I mean.
He gets people sacked for what they say, but then says there's freedom of speech.
That's what you put it better than me, Petrie, but I was just thinking, I mean, people who criticise our country, and I know it's not ideal right now, should look at what's going on in their own